we're going to need our whole hour to do our stuff here today. Thank you again for being here so faithfully. Last week felt like I missed the family reunion. It was like, where are my people? But it was all good. So again, thank you for being here. Just a couple little logistics. Ray reminded me, Ray, my lovely assistant and dear wife of 50 plus years, a lot of plus on the plus, said if people don't have the evaluation, you need to come back out and get one. Everybody got an evaluation form on the way in? Okay, let me explain a little bit about that now that you have it mostly filled out for a lot of you, but that's okay. This is an evaluation of the 5 sessions that we've done up to here. And I would ask you to be gracious and bear with me. You're going to get another evaluation next week, because next week is a signal event for fellowship and for me and for what we're offering through this with the will and the trust at no out-of-pocket costs. Okay, so I know probably a lot of you are really interested in that, and I'm really interested in it. Here's what it means for Don Reed. I am not doing the presentation that I've done here for 9 or 10 years called Estate Design. That was 2 hours and 15 minutes, went into the techniques of estate planning and wills and trusts and so forth. This is about an hour, 55-minute or an hour presentation by the ministry, well, from the ministry, not by the ministry, it's by Don Reed. But it is their presentation that I am learning to do rather than doing the one that I've done last time. So, as they say, pray for this boy, okay? Because I'm very comfortable with my stuff, but this is a whole deal thing. I've listened to two different presentations of it, one about a 49-minute presentation, and the other one was an hour and 42 minutes. We're going to be more toward the 49-minute version next week and probably do about 50 or 55 minutes, then have some time for Q&A. So, as you bear with me, you will get another evaluation, and keep that one until after we do it, okay, next week, because it's not, you don't know, and I don't know how it's going to turn out, but it's good stuff, and it's customized to prepare you for their process. Can you hear what I'm saying? It's not what we've done here, but we didn't have the offering, or we were not organized or not associated with this ministry before. But it's their customized presentation, and I'm more than happy to do that. But it will be a first time through, and so again, pray for this boy. Now, as with every week, you're going to get some handouts. This time, it's on into savings and investment. Multiply it faithfully. This, I will mention this a little bit. But it's about financial planners and the different kinds. And when we come to wise investing, that becomes important. Retirement planning mistakes you will never forget. Then there's a one-pager of 23, I think it's 23 things, steps to a life of financial freedom. If you didn't take anything from this class, but just kept this sheet and, every month, just look at it and talk it over with your spouse, if that's your situation, then you would be well on your way. This comes out of the little book called Wealth Conundrum by Ralph Dudera. Became a multimillionaire by age 40. Asked God, what should I be doing with all this money? I can make more money than I could ever spend. That's a nice place to be, maybe. And he developed these 23 rules for a successful financial journey, financial freedom along the way. Highly recommend it along the way. This little book, Treasure Principle by Andy Alcorn, you get on the way out. It's really the primer in biblical finance. It's an unpacking of Matthew 6:19 through 21, which says, do not lay up treasures for yourselves on earth, because moth and rust and stealing and thieves, they're going to take it. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where those things don't happen. And then a little summary verse in 19, for where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. If I invest in General Motors, I look on the stock page and see how General Motors is doing, right? If I give to a certain missions, Ray and I read their reports of what is the return on that investment. Where your treasure is, there will your heart go also. Key verses in the Bible, words of Jesus. The other one that I'm going to give you is another video, and in there you will, the one that's really curious, to me anyhow, it is a testimony of a man who became one of history's handful. Now, that was a term created by Bill and Vanette Bright. How many know who I mean? Well, Bill and Vanette Bright, founders of Campus Crusade for Christ, now called Cru. Okay, and they would go around the country. They would have rooms full like this of couples, and here would be the challenge. Bill Bright said history has been changed by a handful of people. For example, who's the person that changed the history of Germany? Hitler, yeah. And he went on into that. But he said, God may be calling some of you here in the room tonight to be one of history's handful to change the world for the kingdom. And there's a story of a man on here, Scott Lewis, who went up afterwards and said, Bill, I think that God is calling us to do that. And the first question Bill asked was, how much did you give last year? Now, he was an independent businessman in Sacramento, California. He said, with maybe some degree of pride by his own confession, he said $17,000. And Bill said, okay, next year your goal is $50,000 and your lifetime goal is $1 million. That's how you get into the history's handful. And a very interesting story in a secular company, how the secular employees got so enthused about meeting this increasing goal every year that one Christmas, when it was end of year and they're trying to make whatever, 200,000, whatever it was, they all gave up their paycheck in December in order to meet the goal because it emptied the coffer. Then a miracle story of how God refilled the coffers and beyond when January hit. Anyway, hopefully I've tempted you enough to listen to that along the way. Okay, so next week will be a little different. I'm very excited about it. And again, very thankful for fellowship, wanting to do what we said was the byword of this class the whole way. Not what we want from you, but what we want for you. So fellowship is the entity. It's really underwriting a will and a trust at no out-of-pocket cost for you. Okay, so you can say, thank you, God, thank you, fellowship, if you enter into that process along the way. So we talk about retirement today, and we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and I'll hopefully have some time at the end for a couple questions along the way. So let me pray, and we'll jump in again. Father in heaven, thank you for your grace and that we can come back together 2 weeks later. Thank you for health and strength for each one of us. We are, as Jesus said of the naked man in the cemetery, we are clothed and in our right mind, and for that we're grateful. And we're here to hear from you. Let the Spirit be our teacher. Let the Word be our guide. And we do want to align our finances with your heart, being generous and taking care of our family and all the things we talked about along the way. And today we look at this kind of curious phenomenon in our culture called retirement. So give us wisdom as we think about where we are, and if we're younger, we have time to plan, and if we're older, we may come to face some of the things that we need to do at this point. So let it be a learning time for each one of us, I pray in Christ's name. Amen. Okay. Now, hopefully all the technology is working. We were struggling with it earlier. We'll see when we get to the video. It's been a journey. So, pursuing financial freedom, retirement planning. And financial freedom is not a casually chosen term. I will not only give you a definition of it, but I will talk about the parts and pieces of it, of financial freedom in retirement, when we get to the proper point. Here's some of the ugly. Retirees' lack of preparation. Now remember, we live in the richest country in the world. Most of us work 40 plus or minus years, whatever it is, with probably good income. And yet, here's the sad statistic. 97% of people could not write a check for $600 in retirement. And we'll see why in a minute. 54% are still working after 65. And I think I mentioned before, bless Walmart for letting older people work. But it is a sad commentary when you walk into Walmart at 10 o'clock at night and gray-haired people are stocking shelves and pushing pallets. Everybody get that picture? They should not have to be doing that. but it's because of lack of preparation, et cetera. 3% are financially secure. You go, really? Really? I mean, just think, half of our country is like in poverty, so that, there's 50% already taken care of. But feeling secure, and we'll, on the next one, bankruptcies increased 244% for seniors. And that is most often caused by health costs. Okay, some catastrophic thing, cancer, or putting the new parts and pieces in, or a stroke, an extended care, dementia, whatever it is, becomes overwhelming, and people say, I give up. I give up. And et cetera. In the last decade, that's really increased along the way. Now, more than 70% of Americans do not believe they will retire with dignity. So coming, and we'll see the Forbes report in a minute, of how they've come to that conclusion. It's kind of a four-step journey, the way that Forbes listed it out. But that is a sad commentary. When we've lived in the richest country in the world, had good jobs, had a flow of money, and maybe $1 million or more, and we're not disciplined enough to say, there's something that I need to be planning for in the future. 80% of Americans believe their standard of living will go up when they retire. And that's a fantasy for most people. You go, well, I'm not going to have to drive to work. I don't have to buy work clothes. Well, then all of a sudden you hit healthcare costs, and you hit inflation, and you hit whatever happens in life. It's a fantasy for most people. Boomers, and with all due respect for those of you who are boomers born between 46 and 64, are depending on our kids. You are depending on your kids, because I'm not a boomer. I'm before that. Is obvious. To kids to take care of us. You go, what? Actually, I heard that statement first. I was in a seminar in Denver in 2009, and the leader, we were talking about donor development and stuff, and he made that statement. I raised my hand and go, Mark, that doesn't make any sense. It was right after the 07-08 crash. Everybody is concerned about retirement. He goes, well, okay, I'll get the article. So the next class, he came in with the article. I think it was August 13, 2009, boomers depending on their kids for retirement. Go, what? What did that mean? How could that be? But dial ahead. I have two pastor friends who are in that very situation. One bought a house in Chandler, Arizona. It was when things were going up after the crash, more than they should have bought. It went down again. And then finally, and I don't know if you know that, but the government had a plan to give you $3,500. Just leave the keys on the counter, rent a U-Haul, and leave. And that's what they did. And walked out of the house in Chandler. What did they do? Moved into their son's basement in Seattle because they're depending on their kids. Another one is in North County, San Diego, a real good friend of mine, who is in a house that he bought, and they'd already put $800,000 in the house, but it was not habitable yet. They didn't, but two sisters actually spent $800,000 on a house on a hillside, and did not comply with all the regulations of San Diego County. Then he picked up the house, and the only reason that he and his wife are in it now are two reasons. One, they rent every nook and cranny to University of San Diego or college university students around. And number two, there's three things actually. Number two, their son has signed for 25% of the mortgage. And number three, one of the bedrooms is a granny unit for his mother, so they get that income. There's something wrong with that picture, okay? But it's true, depending on the kids. I don't need to save up during my working life because my kids are going to take care of me. Well, it doesn't always work out that way. The average boomer has $30,000 in savings after working a lifetime. Yeah, shocking. That's Forbes, the finance magazine. It's a little bit old, it's 2013. But we're going to see the rule for drawing out of your savings is 4%. 4% times 30,000 is $100 a month. That's your retirement plan. Yeah. What do you say, Taylor?
I said plus Social Security, that doesn't pay.
Well, we're going to talk about that's one of the three legs on the stool. Yeah, that we have to figure out along the way. But $100 a month from your savings from a lifetime. Incredible. Here's how Forbes unpacked it. What's happening, and this was back almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago now. Retirees say, I need to come back to work. But when they go back to work, they're not going to be rehired at their salary. They're likely not going to be given a full-time salary. They're going to be part-time at maybe entry level or a little bit more. So they're not going to replace what they lost, number one. Then other people watching what their friends who retired and are trying to get back to work, they go, I'm not going to retire. I'm staying in this job. Now that has an impact on the upward mobility for the younger people if you've been in that kind of a corporate environment. There's not the room created at the top, in your department or whatever it is. So it has some domino effect, some ripple effect. And then full retirement is unreachable. I will have to push pallets at Walmart because we will never have enough money. And then full crisis, I'm drowning, and that's where the bankruptcies come from. I will never get out of it. What a sad commentary to end life. But remember, we talked about, and we're going to talk about children a little bit in this section too. Our country has given, in public education, has given no financial education to people, and this is why we end up here. We haven't taught them how to save, to give, to spend wisely, et cetera, along the way.
Part of the plan.
Huh?
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's okay, Taylor. I love your comments. The lack of planning puts many seniors into the crisis mode leading up to and facing retirement. And if you listen to any financial programs like Dave Ramsey or MoneyWise with Rob West, whatever, many of the calls are, I'm 67 years old, I still have $200,000 mortgage on my house, what can I do? Well, what can you do at 67? It's a crisis. It's so sad. Here's a three-legged stool for financial planning. Number one, Social Security. Taylor, bingo, good segue. Did you write this material? Social Security. Well, Social Security came on board in 1935, and if you go back and look at that description, it was to supplement retirement income. It was never made to be our retirement income. It was to, the three-legged stool, it was only a part of it along the way. But Social Security, for you guys, Taylor and Jacob, there are more people your age and a little bit older who believe in UFOs in spite of the June 25 revelation, right? More younger people believe in UFOs than believe they'll have Social Security when they get to retirement. And there's maybe good reason for that. So the point is we can depend less on that. We're probably in a better place now than we're going to be in the future, and all sorts of predictions on that you hear. Secondly is pension and retirement. Three-legged stool. One leg is gone. If one leg is gone, it's not too good. A one-legged stool is better than a three-legged stool because you can balance on that, but a two, probably not. Pension and retirement. Here's what's happening in our country, and a lot of you have experienced it, that pensions are basically now gone for most employees. And there's a reason for that, because pension plans started promising what they never could deliver. We lived in Northern California. The first city to declare bankruptcy was Vallejo, V-A-L-L-E-J-O, Vallejo, California. And they declared bankruptcy because they had $18 million, they're a small town, $18 million in pension benefits that they could never fulfill, never satisfy. So they declared bankruptcy. Then the neighbor city, Stockton, California, $200 million. And then it was Orange County, $1.2 billion. And then it was Detroit at $18 billion of promises that they were never going to fulfill. I have a man who's been in our men's Bible study for a long time, and he comes from a family of firemen. His dad was a fireman in Detroit, and when that was all coming down, he said his dad wrote him and said he was just angry. He then lived in North Carolina, moved out of Michigan, but his dad, I don't think this really happened, but my friend likes to tell stories. He said my dad wrote to the retirement plan up in Michigan and said, just put me on welfare. I'll do a lot better than getting the retirement plan that's left there. Because the pension plans bankrupted a lot of municipalities is the point. And so that started it. Corporate now doesn't do it. And what is it replaced by? You are offered a 401k, or if you're in a nonprofit, a 403b. You're often a Roth regular and a Roth IRA. Okay, what's happened to that shift? Who is taking the risk for your retirement? It was the company. Okay, guess who does now? You retire at a dip in the stock market. Sorry, you were born the wrong day. It's all given to the individual. It has totally changed the retirement plan. Now, confession, candor, I was in a retirement plan where there was still a pension. That's how long ago it was. And so I'm still on a pension, but I when I could raise your hand, are you in a pension plan? And I know it would be a minority here because those just disappeared off the face of the earth.
How were those set up?
Pardon?
How were those set up, like the pension plans?
How are they set up?
Back in
the day?
Yeah.
Just like 401ks are, but they took the risk. So, okay, we're getting into territory. ERISA is the Employer Retirement Something to Act to guarantee that you keep the rules. So the retirement plan, though it was in an organization called Baptist General Conference, or the group that I was with, we did voluntary take out of our check, just like you would with a 401k, and then they would match, but only up to 3%. But we always put in 10%, was not available for Ray and I until we were 35. The first 7 years, it was not offered to us. But then we put it in faithfully over the years, and then every quarter we would get a statement. If you keep giving like this, when you retire, you'll get this much every month. Well, you don't get any of that from a 401k. You get, here's your balance, up or down, live with it. Okay? So the responsibility, and they were under the ERISA rules so that they would conservatively invest so that they can guarantee that along the way. Does that make sense? Yeah, that all, Paul.
There's another shift in the industry occurring too. So I have a pension plan, but
Okay, cool.
millennials do not value that because it's time-based.
Yeah.
And so I'm grandfathered in, but we did away with our pension plan,
Okay.
increased our matching benefits in the 401k because they never intend to stay more than a few years.
Did you hear that in the back? Sort of. Okay. We're doing a generational thing here where it's not valued, and Jacob and Taylor, I was thinking about you this morning when we talk about retirement, and how you even think about that. And we have 6 grandkids. Do you know some of our grandkids, Connor? Okay, maybe Zach or somebody. We have 6 grandkids. I think one has been out of school 4 years, and I think as of June 1, he maybe had his first full-time job out of college, out of university. So it's not only not valuing the retirement, it's not even thinking about it for most kids. I don't need, I say to my grandkids, how are you going to work? Our granddaughter, oldest granddaughter, well, I'm doing this. Well, how many hours you getting? Well, 24 to 30. Well, there's no benefits and there's no retirement plan. It's not even on the radar, So that's why a lot, and Paul, correct me on this, but I think a lot of organizations are moving to like a mandatory withdrawal. Is that true?
My
Out there?
organization is.
Yeah,
And I work
yeah.
for UAMS, one of the largest employers in the state.
Okay, medical, they're saying we're taking it out whether you want it or not because there's a crisis coming for the millennials and they're just blinders. Yeah.
Yep.
So, yes.
One quick thing,
Sure.
something new I think it's been fairly recent. One of our granddaughters was looking for a summer job. She's 17. And she was offered a job at a business in downtown Bentonville.
Yep.
And they didn't want to put her on a W-2. They wanted to do it as a contract service under a 1099. That just sounds pretty sketchy.
Well,
I can understand the business's perspective on it, but
there are legal rules on what you can do, and RE/MAX, for example, went through a whole court case because they wanted all their real estate agents. Any RE/MAX people here? Get nervous. But they went to court over this very thing because they said they're all independent salesmen out there. They go, wait a minute, Do they have an office? Do they come? Is a name on the door? There are rules on contracting. Now, maybe little businesses, either they're ignorant or they choose to ignore them. Part-time employee, nobody will ever check, da-da-da-da-da-da. But again, it's that same principle, putting the responsibility back on the individual. That's the move in our culture. So our protection in retirement is reduced as a result. Good point. Good point. Okay, trying to get to the third leg of the stool here. And it is what we talked about before. What have you saved up? And that's the 4% rule that you pull out. Why 4%? That's the calculation of what you would need for your retirement savings to last 30 years. It's conservative. I think there's been a little move, Paul, maybe help me on this, to move to 5%, some people. But again, they get real nervous, when we're at a, less than 1%, earnings rate on accounts and so forth. But that's a conservative rate. If you draw out only 4%, then likely, very likely, and if things go forward the next however number of years, you will have most of your capital left. See what you're pulling out only the earnings, and you will have capital left for legacy planning, which is our lesson next week. Okay, what are you going to do with what's left over? So, but again, it's if during your whole life you spent more than you made, it's maybe hard to change habits when you get into retirement as well. Okay, three-legged stool. Unfortunately, I put the three-legged stool picture on my copy at home this morning, but it's not on this copy because it's a different world here. So, okay, three-legged stool. Okay, whenever you get ready, good. Okay, here's financial freedom, because that's what we're looking for, is financial freedom in retirement. It is when your passive income exceeds your expenses. When your pension, Social Security, interest, investment income exceed your living costs week by week. Everybody got that? That you can sit at home. You can go visit the grandkids. You can do whatever. Now, thankfully, by God's grace, this is where Ray and I are. We are in what I lovingly call the volunteer chapter of our life. And that should be the goal for retirement. And we'll see a little video, if it all works, that underscores that. But what are the pieces of this? One, and it's on the page, on the 23-page list of financial freedom. Live below your means. Pay off your debts so that you're debt-free by retirement. Not I have 42,000 credit cards and I have 250,000 on my mortgage and I want to retire early at 62 and live on my Social Security. That is a recipe for disaster right there. If you have not saved up and you're still in debt. So it is financial freedom is getting out of debt and then having income in place. Well, how does it get there? Through, as I said, I started at 35 years of age with a retirement plan. I worked until I was 70. So I had 35 years of earnings, which gives us that cushion along the way. So we are financially free by God's grace to not only volunteer, but to be generous along the way with what God has given us in our finances. The culture's addiction to materialism, consumption, and greed has stolen from many people's retirements. Okay? Materialism, the things we want, consumption, I have the money, I can spend it. I was just telling Friday night, we were at a little social gathering with seniors, and they were talking the cost of their pets who have diabetes, and now it's a different kind of diabetes, and 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 I was thankful, and I'll tell you the worst story in a minute, Paul. I was thankful that the guy said, who's doing all this with his dog. By the way, a week ago, I stopped at his house for some minute. Oh, what have you been doing this morning? Well, I was cooking chicken breasts for our dogs. Are you kidding me? But thankfully, on Friday night, he said, after telling about the whole diabetes stuff, he goes, these are generous Christian people. I'm not sure that's the best use of God's money. And I go, I am glad to hear you say that. And then I told him this story. I have a cousin who has a daughter who works in the Pentagon and does things she'd have to kill her parents if she told them, right? But she has a bunny. And they told me this story in May when we were out there. She's had 3 operations on that bunny because his intestine gets knotted up. Guess how much each operation is? $1,000. And she said to her mom and dad, like, yeah, mouth wide open on the back row. I love it. Like, are you kidding me? Here's what she said when her dad challenged her on it. I got the money. Yeah, she's single. I'm all alone. It's my pet. Okay. Proverbs 21:20. The wise store up choice food and olive oil, but fools gulp theirs down. Or, as Eugene Peterson said in the Message, I love this, valuables are safe in a wise person's house. Fools put it all out for yard sales. It's gone at a penny on the dollar. And this one, 4 things are small, yet they are extremely wise. Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer. The crass way of saying this, we only have to be smarter than an ant to end up with a good retirement. A little bit condemning, but I didn't write it. Don't kill the messenger. I've said that before. Okay, the wise person who develops self-control and planning will, and when I first taught this class, I had it, will be prepared for the retirement phase of life. I put in most likely, because in a calamitous world that we live in, where I don't know if you, in the European crisis, if you picked up the phrase, bailouts, where we bailed out banks here, they had a thing called bail-in. Do you know what that is, Paul?
No.
Wow, I'm going to educate. Bail-in was the country was going to look for the millionaires and go into their accounts and help solve the national debt.
Yikes.
Yeah. So I put most likely in here because only God knows along the way. Okay, investing. God's counsel is this. Steady plodding brings prosperity. You will not see lotto tickets in that formula along the way. Here's what the verse says in Proverbs. Good planning and hard work lead to prosperity, but hasty shortcuts lead to poverty. And I think I've said before that people who win the lottery within 18 months, they're broke again because they didn't know how to manage money in the first place. All their friends, want a Lamborghini or they want a whatever, around the world trip, and it's gone in 18 months. Hasty shortcuts. There's another verse that says, when we do not, I should have it up here. Here's the paraphrase of it. When we do not, by work and time, earn what we have, we don't value it. A lot of wisdom in that, If your savings account, your retirement, your investing, whatever it is, it's because you set aside and you worked hard and you were diligent, you were cautious in your buying. That has value. That has value. If we get it free, it doesn't. Here's a chart, and the light blue in the bottom is the money you put in the account. The blue, and this is at 6%, so it's a little inflated for whatever for now. But the blue is what was earned. And then here's the quote if it comes up. Yeah. Compounding is the greatest mathematical, this is so small, but it's a mathematical discovery of all time by Harry Einstein. Well, Einstein, Albert, but amazing. It's not E equals MC squared. It is the compounding of putting it away and letting it grow. Okay? Part of preparing for retirement. Here's the basic principle. Spend less than you earn, save and invest the difference. In the bright orange book I gave you, The Genius of Generosity, again review, cliff notes of the book. To be smart, spend carefully. That means not beyond your means, live below your means. Buy wisely, something that's good quality and will last. To be wise, save regularly. That's That's right what we were talking about today. You save for 30, 40 years, you're likely going to be enjoying financial freedom in retirement. And to be genius, give extravagantly, because God says if we can be trusted with little, we can be trusted with much, and that is not prosperity theology. Do not report me, Steve, to the elders. Okay, that is biblical, a verse that I quoted. If we can be trusted with little, God says, I can trust you not to spend it all on yourselves, but in fact to support that missionary or that youth who wants to go to camp or whatever it is that comes along your way that God wants you to participate in. We've seen this chart before, but just look at the trend. What direction is America going? Savings? Right off the cliff. It's up and down. But that's, again, underscores the value of Romans 12:2. Don't do it the world's way. Be countercultural. And that's wise counsel from God himself. But we have a choice. Now, if any stockbrokers here? Okay. What's the first thing that a stockbroker says if you go and say, hey, I need some help in investing? What's the first thing they say? Diversify. Now, I'm sorry if you went and paid for that because it was free from Solomon many years ago. It's been in the book if we would just open it. Okay? And in Ecclesiastes, he said, but divide your investments among many places, for you do not know what arises, what risk might be ahead. I've asked for a bigger monitor back there. And here's the history in this room. Originally, this room, I found it this last week, was turned the other way. And that was the monitor for the crowd. Then, at some point, they turned it this way and put the big monitor up so that people could see it. But who did they forget about? The person who's working up here. So anyway, working at it. I would like to have it by next week because I'm not that familiar with that. I can't even read these. Anyway, Solomon said, but here's the interesting thing to think about. How would he do that in his day? He didn't have the Dow Jones. He didn't have the New York stock market or the Hang Seng or whatever it is. What would Solomon do? Ponder.
Gold, silver, grain,
Okay,
wine.
different commodities, gold, silver, grain. Good point. It's Bob, right? Yeah, good point, Bob. Okay, what else?
Land, livestock.
Okay, again, diversify. Good.
Countries.
Huh?
Countries.
Different countries. You know what country's going to do well. You loan them, $10 million of gold or whatever. Well, you better spread that around a little bit because you don't know countries. How about don't put it all on one ship when you're selling grain to Rome? Put it on 4 ships. Anyway, it's very interesting that Solomon had the insight to do that, millennia ago. The very same basic strategy for our investments here. Avoid risky investments. What are the indicators of a risky investment? Unusually high rate of return. And I told you the story about a guy in Dallas. We can double your money in 18 months. $7 million he gave to the guy and lost it all. Okay, unusually high rate of return. How many of you know what I mean? Raise your hand. Ponzi scheme. Okay, it's named for a man who had a scheme where he would take money from Taylor, and then he would promise Bob, I've got a 50% return on your money within 18 months. But in order to keep paying that, he's got to talk to, who do I know? He's got to talk to Paul, to pay money, invest some more. So you build this house of cards, which eventually collapses, right? Ponzi scheme. Names are so funny. What was the name of the guy who escaped with, he raised $500 million and left, it was some billion, like $2 or $3 billion. Bernie Madoff with it. That was his name, Madoff. Life is so funny. Bernie Madoff with it. Yes, he did. I think he died at 87 in a jail in Florida. But come into the Christian sector, and it's even more disturbing. How many of you know the name John Bennett, New Era Philanthropy, 1995? He raised $500 million from Christian organizations, missions, colleges, churches, individuals, $500 million, put $135 million in his pocket, and got caught. And if you go to New Era Philanthropy, you can find who in Northwest Arkansas got caught in that. Because it was nationwide. It was amazing. We are all greedy. The man came to Jesus, and when Jesus was talking about something else, he goes, "Hey, settle the estate between me and my brother." What did Jesus say to him? Beware of all kinds of greed. Beware of all kinds of greed. Any of you recognize the church, Bethel Church, Redding, California? They're known for miracles and prayer and so forth. 2 different men in that congregation have been accused within the last 18 months of Ponzi scheme and taking the people to the wash within their own church. How many of you know the name Kirby John Caldwell? A Houston pastor who has been honored by the White House for being a leader in Houston in the underprivileged community. But he stood up within the last few months, or maybe a year ago now. He had built his congregation of $1.3 million. And then he said, "Oh, I'll give it back," and confessed, but he went to jail for it because it's a Ponzi scheme along the way. Anyway, we are all given to greed, and we really need to, not fall for what seems like too good to be true, because it's probably true. Decision made quickly. Oh, this offer is only good. Your friend comes, the guy, I get it through. It's only going to be here till Friday night at 10 o'clock. Back off. And little is said about risk or loss. All these Ponzi schemes, there's no guarantee behind any of them. It was just a good salesman with the ability to sell a risky investment. Maximize returns on your assets and investments. Well, you say, yeah, that's not easy to do. Here are some things that get in the way. Our emotions that investors tend to react emotionally. There's a whole psychology of it. You can even get a degree in it, maybe. But we tend to do the very worst thing. When the market goes down, you say, "I got to get out of here because it might go down further." Well, you get out of there, and then when you get back in, it's going back up. "Oh, I better buy because, well, you've lost," and it's a mathematical thing, but it's very hard to recover along the way. Emotions, investment costs, and see part of this one article here, financial advisors, different kinds of them, etc. Read this article, because if you are, whatever you're making, 4 or 8% or whatever, if 3% are costs by your advisor or the company you have it with, then you're eating up a major portion that should be compounding. Everybody follow me on that? Beware of the expenses. Read the fine print. And if you're in a 401k or 403b, look at that fine print material and go to your administrator and say, "Do you realize that we're paying 3% on this?" Okay. Be responsible. Read the fine print. Investment costs. And it makes a huge difference. And that's why when we talk about financial planners, there are 3 different kinds. That I know of, probably some of you know a bit more than I do, wouldn't be hard. But there are commission-based, there's fee-based, and fee-only, or something like that. But there are different kinds of planners along the way. By the way, let me take a little aside. When we're talking about investments, some churches are offering a class on investing. Now, if you think that would be a good idea at Fellowship, and I'm not promising it, okay, just write investment somewhere on that evaluation, and it would be interesting just to get some feedback on it. And it might be a 1-hour thing, not 5 weeks, but 1 hour. We might have different kinds of planners in here and describe what their philosophy is, because there are a number of them that are here in Fellowship. But I would be interested in what the interest is. The last thing on this point is the turnover rate. Churning is the word for it. If you have a financial planner that's based on commissions every time, well, I think we ought to buy ABC because DEF is da-da-da-da-da-da. That is a commission event, okay? And can be very costly, and there's been obviously violations of it, et cetera, along the way. But turnover rate is important too, and a lot of other things we could talk about along the way. The master replied, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful with a few things. This is what I mentioned. I will put you in charge of many things, but I want to unpack this next phrase. Come and share your master's happiness. Okay, what's the happiness that Jesus may be talking about there? What just comes to mind? What could we be happy about if we followed that formula? Faithful with a little, faithful with a lot. What happiness?
Financial freedom.
Yeah, I mean, that's back to the Romans 12 too. If you do it this way, it's good, it's pleasing, and it's complete. Gail, good. Okay, financial freedom. What else? Maybe the pleasure of obedience. You've done what God said to do, and it worked out. I put a phrase here, I don't know if you're familiar with it, it's called a non-anxious presence. You're not nervous, and particularly in relationship to retirement. You're relaxing, okay? You're not stressed all the time, worried if we're gonna be able to pay the taxes or have to do it, so.
In that donut book,
Pardon?
in that donut book, it was also about the relationship with God. It's about that child's relationship with the
Yeah.
actually the parent recognizing that.
Yeah. There's joy goes both ways. It's a joy for God to see one of his children obedient. It's a joy for us to be obedient. It's a part of the relationship. We experience it with kids along the way. Thank you, Tracy. Good job. Okay. Here's the challenge. Should turn it over to my techies. I'm going to turn my back because I want no responsibility for this at all. Okay. Some secret code here. See what we do. Ooh, I'm impressed.
Isn't it fun when you impress yourself?
Yeah, don't be too impressed. Okay. Do one other thing.
Good, I appreciate that, and I think there's probably some people who are feeling a little bit of the twinge of, well, what about retirement? What about inheritance? I hear this quite a lot when I preach and teach on these ideas is people really are passionate to give a lot to the next generation. I know you care deeply about your 2 daughters and your grandkids and all that God has for them. How do you think about the ideas of retirement and inheritance with this sort of perspective?
Well, the American model of retirement assumes that you're in a job that you don't like, doing work that doesn't inspire or empower you at all, and the sooner you can get away from it, the better. If you win the lottery, you'll leave work the next day, or if you meet your financial planner's objectives with regard to setting aside retirement funds, you'll leave as soon as you can access those, and you're going to get out of Dodge. Well, fix that in a better way. Find the work that God made you to do with excitement and with value. And why would you ever want to stop doing that? Retirement has no biblical precedent except for the one in Luke 12, where the ground of the certain rich man produced an abundant crop and said, I got everything I ever need. My retirement account is funded. Now I'm going to take my ease, eat, drink, and be merry. And God said, you're a fool. And so, the notion, John, of retirement says there may be a moment when I can no longer create value and I'll stop doing whatever I was doing. But until then, I'm going to keep producing value because God puts resources in my hands while I put value in other people's hands, and the system works. So abandon retirement, but if retirement is a compelling promise of your future, go find a work that you really love and do that instead. There's retirement from careers, but there's no retirement from calling. And if your retirement from a career means that you can now go serve God with the same best hours of your week that you used to serve your career demands, great, I'm all for that. You're a self-funded kingdom worker. But short of that, stay in it.
This is what you're so gifted at. This is what you're so good at, is helping disrupt us. Get us out of the kind of ruts that we're stuck in, out of the ways that the world thinks.
If you get money wrong, you're going to miss the chance to be productive in the things that matter most.
You want to write down that information on the screen. This is a 2-minute 40 clip out of a 30-minute interview Q&A with John Reinhardt and Bob.
In terms of inheritance, now there's a temptation to try and control generations beyond the next generation. I believe that that becomes dicey at best. Boy, in the Jewish system, every generation knew that they were going to receive the inheritance of a family business, a land that, if worked, would produce a result that would sustain them and allow them to have participation in the
Okay,
kingdom.
PC people, I'm
What
a
we've
mad
done with
guy.
our kids is to make sure that
You
what
know,
God wanted to be the legacy within families would be that each generation would be positioned to serve God and would have the capacity to work in a productive way where they would no longer be slaves of Pharaoh, but free under the God who called them to freedom. And so that's what we've sought.
Very hard to see up here with the reflections. Anybody seen the cursor recently?
It's on the left.
Okay. By the way, Bob Shank's ministry, and I tried to find out more about him and failed in that, but he works with Christian businessmen to be of significance in and through their work. And there is that 30-minute video. Gospel Patrons, by the way, is an organization that tracks with business people. Tracks with business people around, maybe even the world. Around the world who have become patrons for the kingdom. And that's essentially defined as supporting an issue. How many of you use YouVersion Bible app? Okay, who are the patrons for that? Anybody know? Hobby Lobby people. The Green family. Okay? They paid for that, and that's why you have it free. Gospel Patron John Reinhardt, the interviewer there, the host, his first book called Gospel Patrons was about 3 people back in history who became gospel patrons. And one was for the person who wrote Amazing Grace in England. There was some lady who gave him money so that he could write good poetry and songs or whatever along the way. So he's trying to further that idea of gospel patrons. In a way, it's not different from the History's Handful that I mentioned with Bill Bright. Okay, let's finish up here. Actually didn't have a piece in here for children, but then somebody said, Don, what about our children? Paul, thank you for passing this stuff along to me. I still haven't got a chance to look at it, but people with children are aware of, okay, in this culture which doesn't teach, what can we do? And there's some things out there. Dave Ramsey, I think, has a children. Somebody told me about that. Yes?
Wasn't me, but yes, he does.
Yeah, okay. So there are things out there. Leviticus covers a few principles here. Accept your responsibility to train your children. Don't count on the school to do it. Don't say they're going to learn it the hard way. That's too hard. You shouldn't be doing that. Direct your children onto the right path, and when they are older, they will not leave it. And thankfully, our 2 children, saw what mom and dad were doing and have followed good practices along the way and are doing well now in their careers and doing well in their generosity along the way. So I'm pleased with that. Model good financial management practices of sharing with others in generosity. So your kids are watching. What are you doing? The conversations at the table at the end of the month is, what can't we pay this month? They're picking up on that. Or they're seeing, do mom and dad put something in the offering, or talk about it if you do it electronically? That you're interested in what's happening at Fellowship or with the missionaries or with a poor family down the street, whatever it is. Your kids will pick up more from what you're doing than maybe the words along the way, though both are important. Discuss your financial responsibilities and decisions with them. I was raised by the silent generation that didn't talk about anything. And if I had life to do over again, one of the things would be to talk more about my children. However, God's grace, just last night, our son called. And he said, Dad, that class you're doing, how can I be a part of that? He's up in Indiana, so we're working out the details. But he said, I want to know what you're thinking. Oh, thank you very much. Only took 54 years. No. So somebody, a few of us know that. We're on the other end. Taylor and Jacob, you didn't hear that. Okay, model good, responsibilities. Again, it's in the Bible. You must commit yourselves to these commands that I'm giving you today. Repeat them again and again to your children. Talk about them when you're at home, when you're you're on the road, when you go in and go out, whatever. You got to say it over and over again because kids are kids. Introduce financial responsibility into your children's thinking process, and we've given you the basic skeleton for it. It is giving, saving, spending. Make it 3 jars, make it envelopes, make it whatever you want to do. But just teach them that basic thing to do with every dollar they get. You give, you save, you spend. And you will pass on your legacy to your children. It will be good, pleasing, and complete. Those words are not original with me. Okay? The plan is still there. Pass it on to your kids. We talked a little bit, means, allowances. How do we do it? Allowances, Dave Ramsey's against that because, everybody gets $20 every week to spend. Well, that's breeding something into your kids that is not healthy, and it's called entitlement. I get something for nothing. And that's a bad path to go on. Dave Ramsey says do commissions. That's the real world. You work, you get something for it. So you have a list on your refrigerator. Mow the lawn, $8. I don't know, whatever it is. Wash the car, walk the dog, clean up your room, whatever it is. But try to connect it to the real world with work and incentives along the way. And I know it's really hard. I grew up on a farm and there was never a problem my dad finding work to do. Okay, at 4 years of age, I had my own calves I had to take care of. When I didn't feed him one morning, he said, no lunch for you, because the calves didn't get fed. I remember that very much because food was important to me. Okay, there are things you learn by working in responsibility. I don't regret that at all. Well, I regret the lunch, but I don't regret being taught a work ethic. It's needed direly in our world right now. Introduce financial principles that are age appropriate. If I give if I held out my hand to a 2-year-old and have a nickel and a dime, which one do they take?
Bigger.
No. Well, why? They got to be taught. None of us are born with financial wisdom. Teach your children. Earning money work, we talked about that. Giving, spending, we talked about that. Delayed gratification, that is, if we do not learn that is what leads to overspending, credit card, consumer debt, bankruptcy, okay? And it starts with that delayed gratification. One of our grandsons wanted to buy Minecraft. You know Minecraft? Some of you with kids. And, he wanted to buy his own computer for Minecraft. He wanted his folks to buy a computer first. And they said to him, okay, I don't know what they worked out, 50-50 or whatever it was. And he saved and he worked and he did this and I don't know. A year later, he bought his own computer. A sense of satisfaction. I invested in this. Don't hand your kids everything. You think, I got a good job, I can do that. I'll tell you, it'll come back to bite you. We have too much a lot of the time. Expect and allow mistakes. At the table on Friday night with all seniors, somebody brought up, I made so many mistakes. And we all commiserated around the table. We've all made mistakes, haven't we? Yes, we've all made it. So allow your kids to make mistakes. They're learning. Allow for personality differences. Some are savers and some are spenders. That's why the verse says, train up a child in the way he or she should go. Because every one is an individual. And what works for one is not going to work for the other. We know that if we've had kids. Some all it takes is a word. And some it takes 2 words or a pat on the bottom, and don't report me on that. Okay? Allow for personality differences along the way. Okay, we made it. But we have time for a couple questions because if you're going to church, it doesn't start for 30 minutes, and if you need to pick up kids, they're okay for 5 or 10 minutes. So. Yes. Great. Break the ice. What's up?
Question.
Yeah.
If a retired couple they're financially responsible, they have a savings, they wanna buy a house.
Yeah.
Do they get a mortgage? If there's enough left over, or spend, if they spend cash, if they wanna spend cash, do they do that, or do they get a mortgage?
Well, you put a lot of blocks on the table here. And every situation is individual. So let me just unpack what you said. They're financially responsible, but come to retirement and don't have a house. I would go,
No, they have 2 homes.
oh, they have 2 homes.
We're talking about getting a third. Do they?
For an investment property or their residence? For investment property?
Investment property.
Yeah.
If they can buy it for cash and not deplete their savings, 4% rule over here. But if they convert it to an investment income, I mean, if they're free and clear and don't have other debts, it could be a wise thing to do. I just heard a discussion, I don't know, yesterday or Friday, I think, I was working out, kind of parallel to that. Actually, it was a 70-some-year-old who had 3 properties that I'm getting tired of taking care of them. So depending on age and, are they a handyman? Are they going to spend all the profit in hiring somebody to do all the stuff? And do they want that bother? So again, there are a lot of blocks on the table. But if they're debt free, they have, their security, house and so forth, and they have the margin to do that. And if they want to take care of it, go for it.
Seems like there's a lot of moving parts with that, because you've got who's managing it, who's taking care of it, and then the whole aspect of what is your strategy with that investment. Because if you start to leverage it a little bit, then you diversify your risk. So what's really important here for the short term, but also for the long term?
Yep.
That's
Good point. Good point. And some came to me when you started that, but no, I lost it. So, but diversification, yes. Responsibility. Oh, when you were saying under management, okay, that's another cost. If you're not a handyman and you put it under management, what's your margin? Are you going to come out with anything for all the trouble? Well, you might better put it in an investment and just have it on a piece of paper and you get the statement every month or get it in your email. Yeah. So counsel is the word.
Yeah, exactly.
Counsel. And let me just say one more thing, Rich. I didn't really speak to the issue of financial planners, but advised, let me say that. Know the different kinds of planners and preferably find one who is a Christian. I had a man, doctor just recently, and he, and there are organizations out there like Kingdom Advisors. Some of you know CKA, Certified Kingdom Advisor. Jot that down. You Google it. You could find one. There's another. See, who am I thinking of? There's a Christian financial planner. It's actually on this sheet right here. So you can find a planner, but I would advise finding a Christian planner, because when you talk about giving and generosity, the secular planner go, well, no, if you keep that invested, you're going to get a lot more. You're going to get a different message. Follow what I'm saying. Okay, great question though. Another question? Yes, Rich. Yeah, sorry.
I would just add that from my perspective, I retired very young. I was not a Christian.
Yeah.
Thought I had enough money to do so
Yep.
based on expectation.
Yep.
And my dream was I was gonna play golf, and I did. I played golf 8 days a week, sometimes twice a day. But what I discovered after going through that for a period of time, it wasn't all that it was cracked up to be. And I got very bored.
Yeah.
And looked for something. Now I'm much older, 70 years old. There's typically not enough, I'm retired, but there's not enough hours in the day for me now, and I'm much happier today than I was playing golf 8 days a week.
The whole myth of retirement, like he said, I'm gonna leave it as quick as I can and never look back, and I'm gonna be free. That's a myth. Because we were not made to be like that, doing nothing. Or Howard Hendricks, some of you know Howard Hendricks' name. He said, I'm not going to end up playing golf in retirement, with all due respect, Rich, playing golf in my retirement, because I don't get it. Standing on a big ball, looking at a little ball, and trying to not hit the big ball while I'm hitting the little ball. if you get the picture. So Desiree, you got it.
Well, I think, I think that there's merit to that
I
and
know.
enjoying it, and I know you're being.
I'm toying with you. Yeah.
However, when that became a focus, there was no perspective.
Yeah.
And now being busy, having a goal, a purpose, is far more rewarding. And
Yeah.
being a Christian now, it's like two different worlds.
See, you're reflecting what Bob Shank said. We were created to be something in this world and interacting with other people and contributing something, which I know you do in your retirement. We're not made to do nothing. It's not a satisfying life. But that's what the world promises. Retire early, do nothing, and you'll be happy. Doesn't happen. Okay. Last one, or we're out? Yeah, Bob.
Shirley and I got to retire on one day after my 50th birthday.
Okay.
And
No, nice, sir.
after a few years, we were completely debt-free right now. And own a
Yep.
house and everything.
Yep. That's good. Yep, that's financial freedom.
It's not only that, it's exciting to see how God uses it.
And you're free to do things for God and share and be generous and so forth. That's the life that's fulfilling. Yep. Okay, last call. Okay, one more thing Ray brought in. You get on the way out. There's a little bookmark that 10 ways to experience God as your provider on one side, 12 keys to financial stability on this side. I love this because it basically summarizes what we've been talking about for 5 weeks on a bookmark. What a waste of time. we could all had coffee or done something, I don't know, watch the movie. But anyway, you'll get one of these. It's in your packet on the way out. Next week, same time, same place, but a different venue and a different look with a very nicely crafted set of PowerPoint slides. I think you will enjoy just the artistic value of them. You will get note sheets handed out. We're done with the Align book. You don't need to bring that next time. But you'll get a new set, and then we'll go through the presentation, and then it will be important for you to be here next week because we will send Monday in an Excel spreadsheet the names of everybody who's in attendance, and that will trigger the pattern of you getting an invite from the company with the code and the next steps. Everybody follow me on that? Okay, and you'll get the code for what they call their financial planning guide, their PG, their planning guide, where you will fill out your personal information, family names, all that stuff, and then you'll fill out your assets. And I was reminded this week in listening to one of the presentations that this one is different than another one we have been using in that they do not, it's going to be much easier. They do not ask for account numbers. They ask for a general value. See the difference in that? Getting every number down and do I mail that or where my number is going to go? But they are, and it makes sense because the distribution instructions, which is what we will end up with if we go through the process, is, what our values are today are not going to be the same tomorrow. The dollar values. Everybody got that? So it's not really that critical whether it's 131 or 132, because the day comes. So the distribution, you'll see them talking about percentage goes to, percentage goes to, percentage goes to. That makes sense because you can use a percentage on whatever you have left when the time comes and God takes us home. Everybody follow me on that? So I think you'll enjoy it next week. Come back. You're a great class. You energize me, and I'm going to go into depression on the 19th. So let me pray us out of here. Father in heaven, just love to see smiles and responsiveness and interest in the topic. And God, I know you're pleased about that too, as Tracy reminded us, that we are interested in what you have to say about the things that we deal with every day in our life. Our finances, our children, retirement, concerns for that, long-range planning. It's all in your book, and I thank you for the 5 weeks that we've been able to just turn to your book every time and say, what does God say and what does God say? And I know that these are people who have a desire to bring joy to your heart and then find that they've discovered joy along the way. Thank you for each one of them. Keep us safe and well over the week and look forward to the new presentation this next week. And I thank you for Financial Planning Ministry and those people who 30-some years ago sought to serve the church by giving this service. And thank you again for fellowship, wanting to be concerned about what they can do for us and not necessarily from us. So help us keep that balance in our life and be generous to you and generous to fellowship and generous to the kingdom, but also just enjoy the great things you give us day by day. We know that's a part of what you said as well. So again, thank you for this class. Bless them as they go. In Christ's name, amen.